All right. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Marian Johnson, toku inua. I'm Marian Johnson. Welcome, everyone. I'm the chairwoman of Electrify Aotearoa. I'm also the chair of the New Zealand High Tech Trust, who put on the New Zealand High Tech Awards, which just happened last week. And I'm also the head of go-to-market for Partly. So I'm wearing 7 million different hats. And the really great thing about what I'm doing now is I know a little bit more about being an operator in the field and how flipping hard that is. And that's given me, definitely understand the rigor of the founder problem. So this webinar is actually a warm-up for our main event, Electrify Aotearoa, which is in a week. And the fact that you're all here is telling me that you're the kind of person who is really someone who shows up before, you know, the whole crowd is there. And that's, I guess, founders in general. So I just want to say that today's conversation is not going to be about whether women belong in high growth startups. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have that conversation because we all know they do. But it's really also not about victimhood. It's not about the terrible stats. We know them. We've heard about them. We are really going to talk about what do we bring to the table? What is the power that we have in our hands? And how are we succeeding? And how can we help each other succeed? So that's the framing for this conversation. And as part of that, we're going to talk about that real experience of building as a woman. And I have two guests here today. I'm super psyched to have them along. We've got Yaela and Lane. And so Lane, I'll start with Lane. Lane is the founder of an organization called What Founders Want. She brings a really interesting view from inside the VC room. So she knows the conversations that are taking place when the founder leaves the room. And she spent some serious time thinking about why the funding gap persists, what needs to change. And I almost forgot, Lane is also a founder. So she has done some incredible work as a founder, breaking through that ceiling, and she brings all of that to the table. And now I'm going to turn to Yaela. Yaela is a coach who works closely with women founders, and she brings a real lived and witnessed experience of what it takes to navigate that space. And specifically navigating it without losing yourself in that process. And she's also created this really interesting framework called the Human Intelligence Framework, which I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about. So hello, Lane. Hello, Yaela. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone who's on this call. We have a really nice chunk of time where we're really hoping to hear from all of you and have a group discussion around challenges that you two might be facing. So I'll kind of lay out the agenda. We've got about 50 minutes together. We've got 10 for that discussion. But before we really get into it, Yaela, Lane, what did I leave off your introductions? Yaela, why don't you start off?
Well, very little. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I think if I were to add anything, it would also be around, I have a podcast called the Powerhouse Diaries, and Marian herself was a guest on that podcast last year. And the reason I mention it is because through that podcast, I got to have so many deep dive conversations, all with female founders, and the data that came back from that, the learnings of actually, no matter what industry we're at, what stage of our founder journey we are at, how universal actually a lot of our experiences truly are, and the importance of having these conversations like the one we're having today to learn from, so we don't all have to learn by falling flat on our face first.
Thanks, Yaela. And over to you, Lane. Anything that I missed out there?
Let's see. I suppose I associate most with being an operator. I guess you did a great job with the intro. Thank you so much. But I have spent my entire life just trying to find a place that would let me move fast and not stop me from doing great work. And I moved to China, and I was employee number 6 at a startup named VIP Kid. VIP Kid went on to be the most valuable online education company in the world. We grew from 1 teacher and 10 students to 100,000 teachers and 1 million students in a 6-year time period, fundraised over $1 billion from Sequoia, and I was the head of education and teacher services.
Holy
I got a taste, in Beijing, China, working 9 to 9, 6 days a week, of what it feels like to build a $1.5 billion unicorn.
Wow.
And then I moved to New Zealand and founded a startup. And the discrepancy between the places and the people, yeah, but I would say, you know, to augment my intro is that, like, I'm just the happiest person in the world when I'm working super hard in the startup trenches, like up to my elbows.
Awesome. That's great. So this is about celebrating that, but it's also about finding the balance. And then it's also about taking every advantage that you have as a woman founder, and being able to really actually grow as far as you possibly can. So I'm going to start off with question number one. And Lane, this one I'm going to target to you. But as I've said, Yaela, if you've got something that you want to add, just jump on in. So what does it actually feel like, Lane, to operate in a high growth startup environment as a woman? And I mean the real, like, really, what does it feel like? And specifically I would have thought your experience in China would be somewhat unique. But yeah, just give us the real lowdown.
I mean, I think the unique thing is I'm still alive, still alive, right? Like, it was rough. I'll tell you what, high growth startups to me feel like the basement in a office that's far too crowded and really sweaty because the startup scaled too quickly. It feels like knowing that you will be fired immediately if you don't hit your KPIs. It feels like extreme accountability because no one has time for your ego. If you can't get your ego out of the way, it feels like terror and freedom, like the freedom to live and die at your own hand. For me, a total glutton for punishment, super ADHD, didn't know it until just a couple of years ago. I don't know how that's true, to be honest with you guys, but it felt like my first opportunity to have the ceiling removed from over top of me, to get everyone out of my way whose ego or whose desire to be seen as, to who I was a threat. That doesn't happen in high growth startups because you're running out of runway. Like, there are bottom lines that, the company can fail, right? So to me, it feels like freedom. You also have to pay for it. To be out of it is probably the most difficult thing for me. Like, a return to regular work. The workplace was harder for me than the startup itself, to be honest.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of terror there. I think one of the first your first intro to what did it feel like, there's terror. So I'm employee number, definitely not number 6. I would say I'm probably employee number 129, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified of effing up. I'm terrified of, but I can't think about it. I do think about it, of course, but I just have to keep running, right? And just trying to do my absolute best. And I probably will F up, and maybe I will be fired, but I am doing my best. but normally you don't have that. I don't know. You don't have such a microscope on you as in these kinds of organizations.
It's the number one thing about high growth startups is that they give you the ability to, like, look at everyone around you who's also a normal person, and you yourself, you're a normal person, and you're being passed these goals, these KPIs that, seem unachievable. You're like, what are you smoking? What are you smoking? This is wild and crazy. But then you do it, and you watch the normal people around you do it. And then I wish they could bottle and sell the concept that you as an individual human being are in your own way. You're the only thing in your way because you can do things you never, ever, ever dreamed of.
It's your belief and vision. And I think to some extent, a lot of that pressure for everyone who's listening comes when you've got those investors. So whether you're seed investors or whatever your scenario and what stage you're in, if you have VC investors, they're the ones who are helping you create those or actually handing over those ridiculous KPIs. And that's where the fear comes from, because it's going to be almost impossible to hit them, right? But you have to hit them. And that's why you're terrified you're about to be fired. Anyway, Yaela, over to you. I would really love to know, from your experience coaching so many women founders and being part of this kind of network and community of women founders, where do you see women founders spending their energy where they really don't have to? So like, what is the tax that doesn't get named? I don't know if I love that part of the question so much as where is the energy going?
I think a lot of the energy, and it also depends a little bit what stage of life, but I think mostly female founders from late 30s and early 40s onward, a lot of energy leaks actually where it does everywhere in our life, where we play a part, right? I think generally speaking, a lot of us spend a lot of time doing everything for everyone and trying to be everything to everyone. And I think when we stop trying to play that part and actually focus on the things that make us uniquely us and good, instead of trying to pretend we're, like the version of ourselves that we think are our investors or our colleagues or whoever it is wants, that's when we really kind of hit our stride. But it's a hard thing to do. There's a lot of rules, spoken or unspoken, on how we should show up as founders, and then especially as female founders.
Yeah. Do you feel like women founders are a little bit more predisposed to people pleasing in general than their male counterparts?
Absolutely. I think that is something that kind of comes with the territory. On the bright side, that also shifts as we shift, where at one point we're like, actually, we give less fucks, pardon my French, at some point. But there is still that.
I think it's fewer fucks, not less fucks. I just want to put you up on your grammar.
Okay. That is, I'm sorry. I apologize for the fear. But I give less fucks about that. No. But that is absolutely true. We do generally are more susceptible to people pleasing. And we also get, from a societal point of view, punished harder for just being anything, like any general behavior, being assertive, setting a boundary, just normal human behavior often gets a label as, you're a bitch, or whatever the label is when displayed by a woman, and less so when by a man. So I think a lot of that energy gets lost when we start to negotiate with our own being and our own inner knowing. I think there's a lot to be said for our kind of data set that we gather as female founders, not just being, mental. There's emotional information. There's our intuition. There's our somatic knowing, how you have that gut feeling, which is stuff we're all taught to like ignore and not take seriously. And I think when we stop negotiating with our inner knowing and ourselves, we become pretty unstoppable. And I think it ties into what Lane was sharing, right? Like in that incredible, almost insane surrounding, there is no time to do that. There's no space to negotiate with yourself and to kind of pretend to be anything but. And I think the art is creating that, or finding that courage to stay true to that when you're also not in such a high pressure, inhumane sometimes situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate that. It definitely feels true. I feel like we've spent so much time arguing for equality, obviously not just in the startup space, not just in front of investors, but in general as a society. What gets lost when that conversation stops there, when it's all about, the imbalance and it shouldn't be imbalanced. So what gets lost in the picture when the argument stops right there?
I think it's a big cost. I think creativity is what gets lost, because if we are so busy focusing on everything being equal and everything being the same, we lose sight of our innate as women, again, like creating creation is, kind of what we do in every way, shape, and form. And when we are so focused on being like a man, or doing the same thing, or being seen as exactly equal, we lose our innate creativity to create and to build and to make stuff out of nothing in our own way, because we're so focused on creating what is already there. We're only creating up to a paradigm that is known. So we lose our innate ability to actually think beyond and think differently, and be truly creative.
I think that's such an important point, because, we always talk about the need for diversity, and then we really need to delve deeper into what that actually means. Diversity doesn't mean you need to have more women around the table, or more, Māori around the table, or more Pacifica around the table. Well, of course, but what you're really hoping for is that by bringing those different genders, by bringing those different groups to the table, you're actually hoping for diversity of thought, diversity of behavior, diversity of all of those things. But if you are a woman who has always worked within this kind of, like, let's just think like a corporate structure where women really just need to model themselves against men, well, you're not really bringing a hell of a lot of diversity to the table. You're just kind of, it might sneak in because you can't help it, but you're trying really hard to kind of be like them, which is not. So what you're saying is let it go, let it come out, be the creator that you need to be. And like on that front, Lane, I want to talk about the biological, the social, the energy differences that you see in women founders, and they're underestimating, they're hiding it away, or they're apologizing for it. What are you seeing there that you think needs to come out?
Gosh, like this, I'm just like sitting over here listening to you two bat like a tennis ball back and forth, and like, processing in my brain, because I think like inside of a startup as an operator or a founder is an okay, happy place for me generally. It's got to be a startup though, not like corporate environment probably. Yeah. But inside a startup is a good place. But when I started to raise money as a founder, when I have to interact with like kind of like the greater players in ecosystems, that is when it starts to get a little dicey for me. When I start to have to pitch to investors, I think that like let me just quickly make sure that I got your question. But like the interesting thing for me is that I grew up first daughter. Anybody else a firstborn daughter in the room? Like, I think that, that's a lot of us, right? I grew up as a firstborn daughter. We talk about people pleasing, like holy people pleasing. I have ADHD, so I grew up just a mask, right? But real drive for, inbuilt and kind of like toxic drive for like success, right? For accomplishment, for it was very focused. My life was very focused in that way as a child. And I spent a lot of my adult life kind of before I found startups trying to figure out where it was that I fit and what was wrong with me. Right. And it was because, my instinctive personality kind of, it fits startups well, but it's that like, I don't enjoy ego management, although I can do it. Like, I realize at this point in my life that like a lot of these strengths that I have, I kind of needed to be okay with the fact that things are unequal so I can handle the feedback that I get. Like a lot of the feedback, the adjectives, right, that I get, or the amount of time, I remember stepping back from my calendar one time and looking at it and being like, I'm spending 30% of my time in ego management and emotional management of the people around me, who should technically, in a leadership position, already have that skill set, right? So I think for me, it's been really important to like, to be able to, in order to regain my balance, I had to kind of look at the world from a perspective of like, how do I approach it? And is it necessary for me to add all of these different kind of ways that make myself less friction or, a little softer? I am born with a lot of these skills, but it was because it's been a journey for me of being forced to have them effectively. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So when you stop conforming to that dominant model, when you stop looking after, the emotional or the egos of other people and so on, and you start building on your own terms, what changes?
Sorry, go ahead, Marian.
Yeah, is it kind of like, you know, what Yaela says, when you stop giving a fuck, excuse me, I'm swearing. This is not the swearing podcast, but I'm just trying to bring it back. But so when you stop giving a fuck, what happens? What happens to you as a founder?
I think as a human being, it's a very difficult thing to do. Like everybody can talk about, I don't care about what people think about me, but like, I want you to find and name one person that doesn't care what people think about them. Everyone does, especially in a small ecosystem, you know, where everyone knows everyone, and, you know, don't run around naked at night because like your career is over and done with. So it like, a small ecosystem. Fine. Repeat your question for me, Marian, if you don't mind.
So it's the question around what stops. So what happens when you stop conforming?
You know, for me, it is that like I need to be okay with the fact that sometimes the way that I approach rooms is not settling for everyone.
Yeah.
That's so hard as a woman. I watched, like, I was in the audience the other day, and I just like finished a bias course, and you know, all of us are like, we're not biased. You know, I know I'm biased technically, but like, and I watched this woman walk on stage, and I watched her do what I always freaking do. Me and my drama classes in youth, right? Walk on and up the energy. I take my energy up, and I will smile a lot more. It will create a situation for me that by the end of the event or wherever I am, that I've got like people thinking I'm flirting. You know, it is, but it's I know. But the thing is that like I watched her pitch. And I was like, shit, I do that all the freaking time. I do all the time. I am really urging you to like me.
Yeah.
Right? I talk too much so that you can't, you know, I want to over-explain. And what I want to say is actually, in reality, I have this massive experience that tells me that I am the bee's knees. I have no idea why I'm exerting all this extra energy that way. It's not a positive for me. It's not done me well in fundraising.
Yeah. And
it's created a situation where I've gotten a lot of like strange head pats or strange relationships that I don't like, that are not particularly equal. So now I just accept that there's this 30% of the audience that's probably not going to be down with what I have to say. And, you know, I can do that and still be friendly, and we can agree to disagree. But like, that has been I am 40 years old. Like that don't tell anyone I'm 40, but like I'm 40, and that has been so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, just jumping on that, I think that is so universal. And I by no means am advocating for not caring. Of course we care.
Yeah.
But what you just pointed out is such an important thing, because even if you do all the things, and you do the smiling and the upping the energy and putting on whatever, and by the way, people thinking you're flirting, that is really an ADHD thing. Like people, I swear to God, the times I've had that, I'm like, I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice.
Don't worry, if I'm flirting, people think I'm having a seizure. Like, it's okay. But to that point, not the seizure, is that like attracts like. Like, I'm here to give the kind of the woo but not woo, a kind of counterbalance to this, right? We are energetic beings. We are human animals. You know how you can walk into a room and like just feel something is off, or have a conversation, like they're saying all the right things, they're doing all the right moves, they have the whole choreography down, but something's just off, right? We feel that.
Yeah.
And so the same is true for when we put it on, when we're masking so hard, when we're trying so hard, when we're playing a part that we think the other person is expecting of us. Actually, on a subconscious level, that does build some mistrust. There is something in their like animal self that's like, something's off. So the whole playing the part of like pretending to be a guy and playing the game it's always been played has served us to a point. But I believe that it's also that exact mechanism that is keeping us stuck, because there is something in there that doesn't feel authentic, that doesn't feel real. So I'm not saying go streaking, you know, through the office, although if that is your authentic self, babe,
Your stuff.
But there is that when you kind of soften into your true self, which is maybe not what people expect in the show, it does build trust. And especially, I believe, and this is your field of expertise, but especially when it comes to deal making and closing and investing, there is that element of trust. And is this person actually going to deliver what they're saying they are going to deliver is such a big part. So
can I ask a question that's like, of the two of you, can I flip it around, Marian? I have a question, which is like, what is it when you are, okay, so you're a woman and you're raised in a certain way and you're a bit of a people pleaser and you take on lots of things and you've got good kind of emotional management. You can have direct conversations, but in fundraising, we're supposed to kind of like act like men. All of the data says that like if you use masculine words and if you pitch like this, and I think I got real trapped in that as well for a while. Like, how do I act like a man? I'm not a man. So what is it then? I just think that that's also something I still have questions about for myself. Is like, what is it to be a woman without all of the pretense, but without having to be a man? You understand my meaning? Like, where is the standard?
I think what that actually means is that one of the fundamental changes that will not shift until this shifts is that, investor committees and the people that you're pitching to as a woman founder, their makeup needs to change, or they need to not be expecting you to come at it as a data robot from Wharton. I think that's what needs to change. And until that changes, these numbers are not going to massively shift. And that's why, as a woman founder, it's really important that you create those relationships with investors in front of any kind of pitch. You get to know them. They start to know you. You don't just have that one shot to flirt the hell with, or just show them some incredible people-pleasing presentation, that they learn to trust you, you know them. And then when you actually go to the pitch, you can actually be your authentic self in the relationship that you've built with these investors. So it's kind of twofold. Number one, we need to really make sure that the investors we're putting ourselves in front of have a reasonable level of diversity. That narrows it down quite a lot, unfortunately. And then if you can't do that, then make sure that when you are in front of investors, when you are in front of people who are going to need to really buy into your venture, that you build that relationship in advance so that you're not coming in as this like, jazz hands, sort of presentation.
Yeah. And just really briefly, in addition to that, Marian mentioned earlier, HI, human intelligence, the framework. And human intelligence is not like an anti-AI movement, but it is based on connection as like the highest form of rebellion and fuel for success. I think in this world, and especially in this context that we are talking about, everything is built on disconnecting and us from each other, the men, women, us from ourselves. Everything is based on just, keeping your eye on the prize and going. When you are connected, and that's what human intelligence is, right? Somatically, emotionally, mentally. That's where your clarity lives. That's where your discernment lives, where your agency lives, your creativity lives. When you actually can tune into all those parts of you, not just neck up, as we are taught to move in this world, that is incredibly helpful. It's not so much about how am I a woman? It's like, wait, we've forgotten how to human.
Yeah,
that's really how to listen to all these information sources that are incredibly valuable.
Yeah. One of the amazing things that I always find about Electrify Aotearoa, the conference, is that every single year, this will be our 5th year, every single year, everyone says to me, and I feel it myself, that this is the most warm, safe, dynamic environment that they have found themselves in as a conference. So we're all used to going to conferences in our, pre-founder work, and maybe even during founder work. But there's something about Electrify, which is basically check your ego at the door, check your nerves at the door.
Yeah.
You can just be who you want to be, and you're going to find women who are just like you, who are absolutely going for gold, but going for gold in an authentic way. They may walk out the door and then start, putting the jazz hands on again because they have to. But I think what we're trying to say in this call is you don't have to. In fact, better not to. Better to like ground yourself in that authenticity. All right, then. So what I'd really like to know is, we've kind of covered this, but I would love to know a little bit more detail from your vantage point, Lane, as an investor. What is the shift you want to see women make in how they're showing up in startups? Even just with their problem solution right at the very beginning, with themselves, not necessarily in rooms full of people, but just all along the way. What is the shifts that you want to see them make?
I think, the shift I'd like to see them make. I have two ways to answer that. My first answer is that I think applies to men and women all together, is that all of us take quite a while in the beginning of our startup and any new venture, especially first time around, to decide that it's only going to be us that is responsible for our success, and that we are alone in our room by ourselves with our crazy dream for a minute, right? You're always waiting for someone to help you. You're looking for the next person. You're spinning your wheels for a long time in confusion, but actually action creates clarity, right? I think that that's key. A lot of times, but what I want to say is this: I have a kind of a different answer to this question. I want women to spend less time emotionally managing the egos of everyone around them, right? And just get rid of the egos as well. They think about how much time you spend there and whether or not it's worth it. It's not particularly your job. It's just that everyone should have a skill set like that. I think, though, that what I want women to continue to do, or I want women to continue to think about, is something that's really contradictory to what a lot of people say. I want women to continue to build businesses that make money. I want women, and the word startup is a stretchy word, ladies and gentlemen. Like, if it's a new business, it must be a startup, otherwise it is not sexy. So we are going to consider a startup something that stretches from billion-dollar outcome, right, down to like a profitable business that makes money and makes your family rich, right? Like, those are startups. And I think that what we see is women, 40% of women founding startups that are actually not really the best VC bets. And when a venture capitalist traditionally makes a bet, they're betting on a moonshot opportunity. These are like 99.9% likely to fail. When they say like women don't swing for the fences, I think that's some BS. Like, swinging for the fences is starting a business in general. I watch women make money from businesses, right? I started a moonshot startup and had to sell it real fast because the government shut down. Like, it's not something I would necessarily recommend. It's like a great financial choice, maybe something to do once in your life. But what I want women to do is to not be pressured by that narrative of fundraising, right? Of traditional fundraising. I want women to continue to look at that scope of opportunity and entrepreneurship, and to be an entrepreneur regardless of the funding at the end of it.
Yeah. Okay. So the focus is like success can look like anything, right? The success can be a bazillion-dollar startup that goes global and that, lists on the stock exchange. Success can also be a solid venture that makes you and your family rich, right? So I think the gamut is the two. I think that I've spent a lot of my time at Ministry of Awesome, and Ministry of Awesome and the team at Ministry of Awesome have spent a ton of time really trying to lift ambition, though, Lane. So we kind of have a counter discussion. And I suppose it's because in those very early days of startup in New Zealand, we had so many people who were founding lifestyle type businesses. And the whole point of everything that we're doing is trying to transform New Zealand into an innovation-based economy. And what that means is that the startups that are being founded aren't going to do that if they're lifestyle businesses. They have to be seriously innovative, opportunity to scale. Doesn't mean a rocket. It doesn't mean all the way to Mars. It just means having that real impact at home and wider. So yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lane, and I don't think we disagree with each other, but I am always exhorting all women founders to look bigger, bolder, more ambitious. Don't limit yourself. Yeah,
I agree. Like, I think my message is always, you're on your own way. You can do way more than you anticipate. Like, life is one time. You got 100 years, might as well go for it. But I just think a lot of times for women, it's a really impossible thing to decide to like bet the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet the kitchen sink. We're the last line of defense. I'm the last line of defense. For somehow I have ADHD and all the responsibility to manage like my DNA that I reproduced, And so it's that like, occasionally in my life, I can bet the kitchen sink, but the economy is a pyramid.
Yeah.
The economy is a pyramid. I agree that like we need those wild people who take those nuts shots, right? We need to let those people fail as well, right? And we need to be okay, much more okay with failure. But I want women to not keep making the choice to be safe. There's a safer choice in entrepreneurship as well. But yeah, again, not that I disagree with what you're saying, but I feel that like people who start businesses that are not on the VC fundable track, number one, have no funding opportunity here in New Zealand.
I know that's wild. Yeah.
And number two, it's really, really like that. The funding landscape here is really detrimental from that perspective. And we don't have any good examples. I think like we've got a lot of like coffee shops and our moonshots, but like I would like us to see us celebrate the $35 million exit.
Yeah.
That's a great exit.
100%. Like there's no shame in that. And yet there seems to be shame in that. I don't know. That makes no sense to me. But at the same time, I also want to say to everyone on the call that this is changing. Like our investment landscape is changing dramatically. If you look back to 9 years ago when I first started at Ministry of Awesome, oh my gosh, there were like 2 venture capital companies in the country. One was, oh my gosh, Movac, and the other one was Punakaiki. That was it. That was the whole 9 yards. Oh, well, Ice House, but they were just starting, and it was really just Auckland. Those were your choices. You had that crowdfunding, or if you knew some really high net worth individuals, which quite frankly, I don't know that many. Most of us aren't that connected to incredible high net worth individuals who'll drop, 500,000 into your business to get yourself started. So it is changing, everyone. I don't want you to feel like it's not. There are places where you can go. And in fact, if you need some assistance on that front, go talk to the people at Ministry of Awesome. It'll cost you nothing. They'll give you some really good direction. But I mean, the main point is be bold, be ambitious, have an impact. And I think even more so because without our participation in these global impact startups, you're going to end up with a world that we have right now, which is homogenous founders solving problems that only they recognize from that homogeneity with this incredible ambition. And then you end up with the pickle we find ourselves in right now, which is not to blame it all on those founders. But at the same time, if there was a smattering of, incredibly successful, or if we even had the same number of women founders, I believe, and Māori founders and Pacifica founders using, their values, this would be a very different world. So we need more women founders. It's not just a case of it's not fair. It's not that. The world needs them. So to me, it's your responsibility. There you go. Go away and create something bold and ambitious.
So was that question?
I love what you said though, Marian. Like you're talking about like high impact. Yes, that is the whatever dollar amount exit. But I think especially as female founders, when we broaden the scope of the bottom line beyond just a dollar amount, like a dollar amount is exciting and creates freedom and opportunities. However, when we look at the impact on a broader level that our product, our solution, our service has in the world. And it doesn't mean that we all have to be, Mother Teresa and save the world, but like we wouldn't be creating the businesses that we are if we didn't believe it had a ripple effect of awesomeness in the world. Because you have to be slightly maybe not, you have to be delusional to be a founder, especially a high growth founder. So in order to maintain and sustain that level of delusion and commitment and energy, I believe we need something more than just the money. And if you focus on that, on what it is, that ripple effect you want to create in the world, even if it is quote unquote just within your team or just within your clients' lives, because that also ripples out again, that helps, I believe, incredibly in sustaining that that pace and that level of ambition beyond just I need to make this amount of money.
Totally agree. And I also agree that I would also like to make the point that it's not an either or. It's absolutely not an either or. I mean, there's so many business models out there right now and businesses out there that are having a positive impact of the world and making a shit ton of money. So it's not Mother Teresa starving or making a ton of money and losing your soul. It's finding the two in the middle. And actually, you know, when you look at women founders and the impact they have and the types of ventures that they're creating and that sustainability aspect to things, you know, and when I say sustainability, I mean people, planet, the whole 9 yards, that is much more prevalent amongst women founders. Quite honestly, that I feel is our female founder advantage. Because when you are selling products out there that aren't just helping you move your CRM to another product in 10 minutes versus 4 minutes, you know, when you're going beyond something like that, and you're actually having a positive impact in the world, then that's an incredible thing. And women founders do more of that than male founders. Sorry, male founders on the call. It doesn't mean that you don't. It just means that we're much more likely to be focusing on or having at the core of our business proposition some form of impact. Okay, so I would really like to know, for someone who is watching this webinar and who's listening to this conversation, imagine that they are pre-seed. So in other words, they have no investors. They're absolutely in those kind of early stages, absolutely working their heart out, trying to build a venture. And they're still trying to figure out what their own style is as a founder, what their strengths are as a founder. Where would you suggest they begin in trying to work that framework for themselves so that they have the most ability to succeed, to keep the eye on the prize, but to keep themselves whole? I'll start with you, Yaela.
Yaela, go ahead. As I lean into
your little square, but of course we're not live and I'm not staring in your eyes. Yes.
I think when you haven't, you know, quite solidified that for yourself, I think a really good place to start is shocking, that connection, that human intelligence. And the easiest way, I always explain this, is imagine you have a board of advisors, like the business of Marian, the business of Lane. And in every decision, every moment in your life, it's like you're on a Zoom call with your board of advisors. But unfortunately, except for you have the mind, you have the body, you have your emotional body. Maybe if you really will, you add in your intuition. I don't know. Let's not go too wild. But except for your mind, they are all muted on your Zoom call. So you can see them like trying to communicate to you, but you're like, no, sorry. If it's not logic, it is not welcome here, because that is what we've been told in our current society, in our framework, especially in business. And it is incredibly powerful to start kind of hitting unmute on those different data sources, these different parts of you that give you information. Your body, how does it feel in your body when you're making a decision? Does it feel like contracting, like I want to just go and hide, or expansive? What are my emotions telling me? Now, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to run your life and your business off something as wild as listening to your body and your emotions yet, but you get to at least hit unmute, get all that kind of data, look at it, and then choose. You can still go with purely your mind. The thing with our mind is built to really just, it can tell you anything. It can tell you that this toilet roll, because I have a cold, is blue and square. And I can make an excellent case for that. And by the end of it, my mind will be like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, totally, blue and square, or not. So our mind will contort around whatever we believe is safe, what we already know, right? And what we already know is inherently not innovation, is inherently not growth, because growth is outside of that scope. So I think the easiest way to kind of get in touch with, okay, what is your truth? What is your human intelligence? What is the place that you move from? Is in these moments when you can take a second, imagine yourself on that Zoom call, unmute one, feel into it, see what it says, feel free to ignore it, but just start getting into the habit of acknowledging that there is more than just the rational mind, the logical mind to it. And then maybe from time to time, have a little conversation internally before moving.
Okay, that's really good advice, Yaela. I'm going to ask you that same question, Lane. So imagine you're pre-seed, you're still figuring out your style and your strengths. Where do you begin? Maybe think about baby Lane when she was just starting out, before she went to China, and before she began founding. How did you figure out what your style and strengths are, and how could you do it faster this time, knowing that you know everything that you know?
That's interesting. I have gone back and forth on my style and strengths. I have skills that are like, my strengths are double-edged swords. So I have I think, like, have you anyone ever taken the Clifton Strengths Finder test? It's the only psychometric test I will ever suggest to anyone, but it's my favorite. But it just diagnosed me with ADHD over the course of my life many times, as many times as I've taken it, growing up in China, and it is that, like, I over-indexed on some of those in China, and then I came to New Zealand and I was like the dragon lady, but I didn't even know it. Like, I can burn you alive in a meeting, and it is just so against the culture here. Right? I had to find some equilibrium. What I kind of wish that I had done, and I do now, I suppose, is like, I wish I would have had an easier time if I had a conversation with myself at any point in my life, especially as the startup founder. Move from operator to startup founder was difficult for me. As an operator, I was like in the weeds, not raising money. Yeah. As a startup founder, I was the face. And so I was also the shit umbrella, right? I'm raising funds, making sure everything succeeds. I think for me, it was very, very important. And I should have sat back, and I do this with myself weekly. I swear, even now, as I sit and say, who do I think that I am? I think I am that I've chosen to do this thing, that I think I can do this, right? And I just want to tell you that, like, you have to sit with that question and accept the fact that you're a badass, right? And that you can bulldoze through walls. And I think that if all of us sat with that question, just embraced the fact that we can and are allowed to play to the total capacity of our ability, like, I would have been so much better off. Number one. Number two, mistakes are just part of the path forward. The faster you make them and correct, the faster you get to where you want to be. And the most important thing for me would have been, you can't take feedback from everyone. While you're a woman, you're probably great at taking feedback. But you need to really be careful how you internalize that. And the way that I handle that is I take the person who's giving it to me, and I also take my foundational truth that says that we are all in our own way. And I say, is the person who's giving me feedback kind of feeling that they couldn't do it? And so they think I can't do it? Like, if all the times I took feedback in my life that something was impossible, I wouldn't be anywhere. But it is still very important to be able to slice off what's valuable of that feedback, right? So I definitely split my feedback into different archetypes, and I have a feedback filter that allows me to dismiss some of it. That is not a common, we tell people take feedback, but like, you can't take it all on. It will stop you. Someone will try to stop you. I think a lot of times it comes back to confidence in myself. What a wild thing to have issue with so far in. I know. Yaela's like, oh, she needs her as a coach. I know. And if I come back to confidence in my stupid self, isn't that wild, right? After all the achievement, all of the accolades, the career, I can't even stand to answer like, why should women be startup founders or in startups? Like, it makes me so angry after all that time building that career, that resume. I still need to sit with myself and say, like, actually, I'm the bee's knees, and actually, this person's feedback doesn't apply in a full scope to me. But that requires me to have a lot of confidence in my own intuition, which honestly is so good. I have great intuition, right? Boom! I know. I feel like she's proud of me. Yaela's proud of me. She's like, oh, yes, girl.
I think we've got an amazing day, Lane, but I have to say, no, I don't mean to diminish what you're saying at all, but I do find that it wanes, right? It wanes and it ebbs. Wait, hang on, ebbs and flows.
Maybe, right, yeah.
What I mean to say is it goes up and down. So some days you may be full of confidence, and then maybe someday something tiny will happen and you get wobbly. And maybe 3 wobbly things happen and you get kind of decimated, and now you're in a crisis of confidence. But the following day you feel a bit better because one of those wobbly things was subtracted. I suppose what I'm trying to figure out for myself, and I am not a young woman. I should have this down pat by now, but definitely my confidence does this all the time. And I think I have to forgive myself. It's kind of like, it's almost like it keeps me safe.
It's almost like you're human. I mean, it's the shoulds. It's the I should have this. I should feel like we are cyclical beings. Like nothing. I think the biggest difference between the old, way of doing business, which is just like eternal, exponential, linear growth, and what I believe is a more feminine, holistic way of looking at the same level of ambition, but instead of just linear growth, look at expansion. Yeah. Things expand and contract a little, You need that little, like when you climb stairs, there's landings. There's landings to catch your breath, to get back, and then you climb again. You cannot, that is not just, we are not built that way. And we are, it's like you get in a car for a cross-country road trip and your tank's empty, and you don't get out of your car and start yelling at your engine, like, why aren't you driving? No, you stop, you fill it up, and you go again. And I think it's the expectation of I should always be on. I should always be excited. I should always know that I'm the bee's knees. I think it's very healthy to have days where you forget that you're the bee's knees, because it allows you to reintegrate, to look for evidence, not just externally, but internally on, oh, hold on, this is who I am.
I want to say, like,
keep going.
I never heard this conversation. That has been one of the more impactful things in my life, is the fact that, like, this level of authenticity is bravery, and not just bravery, but it's like next level up. Like, if you're gonna like play Donkey Kong, like, you gotta get to Donkey Kong, right? Like, this shit is like level 18. We got 20 levels. Maybe it's just life is a series of lessons that if you stop, you plateau, and then like, we all know what happens to those people, right? So it's a question of, like, if life is a series of constant kind of personal lessons to learn, to get your opportunities to get yourself out of your own way, then what we need to have is more conversations like this, so that people know that actually everybody feels like this. Because wow, the biggest detriment to all of us, our strength is the fact that we can be introspective, right? And we are all level 18. But the detriment to all of us is that we're quiet about it, and we think that our problems are unique to us. Like, egotistical, first of all, I realize that none of my problems are unique to me, and I don't have that much of an ego anymore to think so.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, I tell my young daughter, who, she's just setting out in the world right now, that nobody is actually having the life that you think they're having,
No.
right? Nobody is. We're all having the same kind of up and down and up and down and up and down. No matter what it shows on your social feed, everyone is experiencing exactly that. And the minute we all really recognize that and we make it safe for others to be authentic. So just take, you know, quite often what I find is like when I go to a conference and I get all shy and nervous and I'm just like, oh, nobody, I don't know what hair. This is really horrendous. I'm going to go stand in the corner and pretend to look at my phone. I actually just think to myself, okay, you know what? This is not about me. I'm going to go out and see what other people need. And then, you know what? You have permission to get out and be yourself because you're kind of serving other people and not the other way around. Yeah.
I also find like this, because the truth is, and that's what I said before with the podcast, it's so universal.
Yeah.
Even just saying, are you feeling as socially awkward as I am right now?
Yeah.
And you're done, you're in, because I guarantee you they aren't, right?
Yeah. I hope that we'll be able to see some portion of you all at Electrify. There will definitely be the opportunity to be sharing all of these issues together in the community of women founders who are being bold and ambitious, whatever that means for them. But I really just want to say to all of you that I salute you. The world needs more women founders. They need you. They need you swinging for the fences. We know women founders who are swinging for the fences. There's just not enough of them in the public eye. And the minute they're in the public eye, and this is the other version of why we do Electrify, you're going to meet so many founders. You're going to hear from so many founders. You're going to see that they're human beings just like you are, only a little bit further ahead or only a little bit further behind, and that anyone can do it and you can do it too. The role modeling that you're going to see around you will have an impact. And that's the impact that we need to have on the world. More women founders, so more role models just like yourselves. So on that note, I really would love to thank Yaela and Lane for their insights and their experience. I learned a ton. First of all, I'm forgiving myself for the up and down on confidence when I was like, oh, a bad girl, you know, be confident all the time. And then thank you for putting this all together, the Ministry of Awesome team for helping us out here. But most of all of you women founders, thank you for showing up. And please, let's show up for each other. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.